Segment 3, that is an exciting journey into data integration, visualization and dissemination. So in this session, we mostly focus about from data to decisions, that is sharing, visualizing and discovering statistics with geospatial and AI tools. So for this, the first topic is data sharing and visualization tool for better decision making experience from National Statistics Office. So for this, I would like to request Ms. Valerie, Solution Engineer from ISRI, to share her thought about this topic. Thank you. Ms. Valerie, please.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for staying so late in the day. I hope that we can talk about some more exciting ways in which you can use your geospatial technology in order to make decisions, visualize data, and create really impressive analytics. So I'm going to walk through kind of those three different elements of actually being able to discover meaningful insights out of your data, whether that's using multiple data sources from a variety of different partners, using AI in order to actually bring all of that data together, using some analytics tools, and then finally visualizing those so that you can share that data out with stakeholders and the public so that they can also gain insights and helpful information from that data. So that being said, I'm actually going to dive straight into the tech here. And so we're going to show a wide variety of different tools in which you can do these things with. Now, just to say, there are a lot of different tools out there and capabilities, of course. So we could probably spend a whole week diving into the different analytics and capabilities that can come out of this type of data. But to start, I'm going to talk a little bit about using AI in order to explore your data. Oh, we lost the screen. Duplicating again. There we go. I'm just trying to get your cardio in to make sure that you stay awake for the rest of the day. But so what we're looking at here is a tool that'll let me scrape data that has been brought into this particular tool from Esri India. So Esri India has partnered with a variety of different Indian governmental entities and private entities and research entities to bring all of this authoritative data in together into this particular tool. Now, there's different ways in which I can use this tool and explore this data the manual way, but we obviously want to talk about what AI assistance can do for us. We've previously been talking a lot about what AI can do for us in machine learning and deep learning to gain meaningful insights out of your data. But what if we just want our particular assistants to be able to give us answers about the data in order for us to gain quick insights and make our jobs a whole lot easier? We want to make sure that we're also including the analyst into this conversation. So for starters, it's going to welcome me and tell me the different ways in which I can ask this prompt information. So I'm going to start by exploring and say, show me a map with high population and low employment rates. And we'll see what it gives me. Then I can go ahead and click generate. And here on the side, it's going to think and go ahead and give me the options based on the data that it's found and scraped within its own data source. This is not scraping the larger internet. This is only scraping authoritative data sources that we've given it access to. This prevents large-scale hallucination of data or you mucking with any particular data sources out there that might not be true or authoritative. So here it's going to tell me that I have access to the 2011 total population and 2011 population of workers. It's already told me that it's going to analyze the top 25% and the bottom 25%. But maybe I want to explore the data a little bit further as the analyst, because I know there's possibly better population information in here. I can go ahead and click Edit and view my variable. This variable is then going to give me all of the options that it has in its system to view for population that I might want to switch this data out with. Maybe that is exactly what I was looking for, and I wanted to go ahead and switch to the 2024 total population here, and I can go ahead and click Apply. The other option that I have is perhaps it didn't come up with the answer that I was really looking for. So instead, I want to scroll all the way down and view Browse All Variables. This then puts the effort back into the hand of the analyst, and they can decide what they actually want to use for their data. They can use the AI to help it get there, but also make sure that you're going in and selecting the particular data that you're interested in. So maybe I'm interested in high-earning urban professionals, or specifically the female population of workers. Then I could switch out that data and add it into my map instantly. I'm going to go ahead and close this because I'll go ahead and stick with the 2011 total population of workers for now, and I'll go ahead and create a map from that data. This is then going to instantly generate a map that I can view and explore. Because it decided that I was going to look at that top 25% and bottom 25%, I can see here that actually no state falls into those categories. So if I want to, I can then drag these to explore and move around my population amounts and maybe my worker populations. So here I'm going to increase my worker population and decrease my total population so that I can allow for areas that specifically have higher populations of workers and lower population of people. Here then I can go ahead and zoom and explore my map all the way down to the lower administration levels. Then if I want to adjust further, I can. And I can explore the map that way, using the help of AI to get me there, but also making sure that the brain power is on the part of the analyst. One more step that this tool can help us with is then actually compiling a bunch of data all together to look at it. So here, I'm just going to go ahead and look at one of these specific districts, and I can choose to generate an infographic. These are automatic templates that have been created with the data that's already in the system. However, if I wanted to add my own data, let's say we wanted to add census data or any other report data here, I could. Here, I can choose a specific infographic to run, like a demographic survey, and select Run. This is then going to pull all of that data together automatically and give me information about that particular district. Here, using the help of AI and then just a few clicks, I can actually gain insights and meaningful information about my data. One other way that I want to talk about the way that AI can explore data is using an open data hub. At the beginning session, we were talking a little bit about the necessities in geospatial data for India and what particular laws and regulations are already in place. Well, one of those is the idea that you want to definitely make sure that you have open data available to the public. This not only means that your public and researchers can then view that data, but also that several organizations can take that data and combine it to be able to gain meaningful insights. Here, we're actually looking at where I live, Washington, D.C.'s Open Data Hub. Here we have an AI assistant where I can explore all of the data that is in the Washington, D.C. Open Data Hub using the help of my assistant. This is a closed loop, again, that's not going to scrape the internet and give me more information that I'm looking for. So here, I'll quickly view my suggested prompts. I can make a map of my elementary schools. And this could be anything that I have in the system. So think about any sorts of census or statistical reports. If you wanted to gain meaningful and quick insights from those reports, all of that data was formatted in the hub. You could quickly ask questions like having your users view enumeration areas or see what we're looking at here, which is all of my educational facilities. I can then scroll all the way down, see the sources that it gave me, including school zones, all of the schools that I have in the area. And then I can click the map, and in just a few clicks, view the data and explore it some more. So those are just a couple of ways in which AI are enriching the geospatial process and discovery of data. What I want to now go to is diving deep into some specific analytical processes that's using that data. So what we're looking at here is our desktop software that I've decided to pull in a variety of different data sources. Here on the bottom right, you can see our WorldPop data. We had a lovely colleague from WorldPop speaking to us earlier today. So there is that data. We also have percent working population that I pulled down from the data that we were just looking at, that Esri India is hosting in the online environment. On the left, we have business establishment density at the state level that I pulled from MoSPI reports. And then below that, we also have industrial outputs that I also pulled from MoSPI online, publicly available data. Let's say I wanted to combine these four maps and gain an insight of where there is higher economic need. So I want to see areas that have a lower percentage of a working population, a higher population, a low business establishment density, and a low industrial output. Here you can see I'm working with a variety of different types of data, raster, vector, and also at different demographic levels. That doesn't matter because I can combine that all into one question using an analytical tool called suitability analysis. Going over into my model, you can see here that I've brought each unique data source into my map. Now, using suitability modeling, I can combine all of those data and reclassify them to tell them what weights I'd like them to be and what importance I would like them to be in terms of whether or not I've identified those as areas of high or low economic risk. Here, I'm going to explore my suitability model. And as I work through each particular layer, I'm going to transform that data to identify areas of risk. Areas that are in dark red here, you can see are areas that I have identified as areas of high economic need. So those areas that specifically have a lot of population, we're going to identify those as high economic need. Similarly, for my business density profile, any of the areas that have low business density, I'm going to identify as high economic need. Excuse the zooming, that's freaking out a little bit. So those green areas are the areas that I want to focus on. I can reclassify each data one at a time and then go into my modeler and identify the particular percent I want to place as value. Because population is such a strong variable, I've decided to actually decrease the overall impact of that population variable. So here you can see I've lowered that to 20% or 19%, and then I've given my other variables just a slightly higher percentage. So I'm looking at 19%, 27%, 27%, and 27%, giving me a total value of 100% of relative economic need. When I click Run, it's going to go ahead and give me an India-wide information of those areas in dark red where I've identified high economic need relative to the areas of dark green, which are low economic need in terms of intervention. This is, of course, just with those four variables that I've included. I am not a statistician. I am also not an Indian economist. So I just want to highlight that this is just the four variables that I chose to view for this particular study. What I want to now look at is highlight if there's specific districts that have a higher mean percentage of that economic need. So of course what we're looking at is raster data, and so this is imagery data where each pixel has a particular value. I'm then going to apply that to my reclassification to then be able to view all of that data within my districts using something called zonal statistics, where I can view areas of high to low economic need. I can then go ahead and isolate those specific areas of high need. And here I can see highlight on my map areas of high economic need across India. I can also remove the filters that I've placed on this to view all of the relative economic need within districts across India. So this is all great, but I'm still the analyst and I'm still in my desktop application. So next, I want to actually view this data in an online visualization that I can share out with stakeholders or the public. Maybe I want to also add a couple of other variables that I can then add from other sources or my ArcGIS account here on the desktop. With that, I'm going to actually go back into my online environment. And here you can see that I just went ahead and created a dashboard and instantly published that data straight from my desktop into the online environment. This then allows users to explore and click around this data. What I've also added are a couple of other different data sources here. I also had a data set that has indicators with specific economic indicators and values for each district that then, as I move around my map, the indicator value, both recent and previous from a particular date of when that survey was taken, are explored here on the right side. Perhaps I also want to compare this data to other data sources with just a couple clicks. I can then also turn on my comparison tools and turn on something like the black marble nighttime data. This data is hosted in the online environment from NASA using VIIRS data. This will then allow me to see if there are specific areas at risk that perhaps have a higher population or higher growth based upon this nighttime data. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and zoom into this one area up in the northern India and view any area that might be economic risk and what that actually looks like using nightlight data. Maybe I wanted to explore a couple of more elements here, such as enabling future economic impact, such as using schools to ensure that education is happening globally across these areas and that we can ensure economic impact in the future. So here, I'm going to go ahead and view my schools that are in those high economic need areas. This is using OpenStreetMap school data that I've just added in from another source online. Then, using my desktop tools, I also was able to use a network analyst tool and OpenStreetMap layers to be able to identify a 60-minute walk to school. This, if I zoom all the way in, is then going to give me a highlight area identifying where children live outside of that 60-minute walk to school, are perhaps in highly developed areas, and yet are still in those areas of economic need. This is then also going to give me information on the right of the percentage of this population with access to electricity. And we can see from recent to previous, we've increased the value of that from 33% to 99% of access to electricity in this area. This then allows stakeholders to gain meaningful insights and make decisions about policy and where they want to go next and what they'd like to invest in. So this is just an example from me. This is not something that's using necessarily all of the incredible data that you have. So you can bring all of that together as well in order to gain meaningful insights. Quickly here, because I want to just make sure that I leave enough time for the rest of my speakers, I also want to outline some different examples from around the globe. So these are a couple of different examples of dashboards and visualizations that are used from different census and statistics societies from around the globe that are then sharing this data publicly and making it accessible. So here we're looking at war refugee data from Ukraine. Here, we can explore the United States Census information using all sorts of a variety of different data to be able to identify profile information, households, population, and vulnerability indices. And then this example of Saudi Arabia highlights how we can actually use that publicly available data and still highlight privacy. So of course, when we're identifying household information, we want to make sure that we are aggregating that up to a higher level. And here, what we're looking at is a grid that will actually adjust as we zoom and explore around the map to ensure that that privacy level is being maintained across the country. So these are just a couple of different examples in which AI analysis and visualization can really impact and bring your data together and allow you to visualize and gain insights from your data for better policy and decision making. Thank you.
Any question, please? All right. So evidence-based decision making is the need of the hours. Oh, sorry. Yeah, please. Please go ahead. Can we have a mic?
Hi. Majorly just a small clarification. We saw about the AI infographics as one of the tools, right? So just wanted to know how flexible, we just saw that once you click the button, it directly jumped to the infographics and a summary of sorts was created, a tabular format, some graphs were created. Just wanted to know how flexible is AI with that? Can I change the parameters, number one? Number two, because as an analyst, I might not want to present the information in the exact manner. So how flexible is AI with number one, the parameters, specifically talking about this particular tool? How flexible is AI with us choosing the parameters? And secondly, us customizing how we want the data to be presented.
Absolutely, fully customizable. So the answer is 100%. You can then use, so those are existing templates that were what we saw. I just clicked one template and it was giving me the data specifically from the Esri India data set. That actually is a data set you don't have to use at all. So it's all the way customizable as if you didn't want to use any of that data and you wanted to bring in only your own data, you could do that. If you wanted to use part of it, combine it, visualize it completely differently, that's all up to you. You can actually customize it all the way to determine how many pages of an infographic you'd like it to create, what colors you'd like. There's all sorts of really cool different examples that people have made and gotten really creative of the different ways to create infographics. And those are also shareable. So you can actually export an infographic template and give it to, let's say, different organizations were working together or something, they could actually use the same infographic template that you've created. So that actually is not necessarily AI so much it is an automation that you've set up in advance. Yeah.
Any more question we have? All right. Okay. So evidence-based decision making is the need of the hour. So thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your insightful thoughts about this. Thank you. Moving ahead with this session, the next topic of this session is, there is slight change. The next topic is usage of geospatial data in economic data analysis. And for this, I would like to request Ms. Sukankana Chakravarti. She is Research Fellow, United College of London, and she has joined remotely. So I would request a technical expert to please share a screen. Please confirm, ma'am, whether she has joined. All right, so welcome, ma'am.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see you. I mean, but
are you able to see my screen now? Can you see the
yes.
presentation?
Yes, yes. Now we can see.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you for a lovely introduction, and I'm thrilled to be here to have this opportunity to talk to you about some of the work that I do. Unfortunately, I don't have a very snazzy demo for you, but I'm hoping that I will still be able to convince you about the power of machine learning and AI and non-traditional data sources in evidence-based policymaking. So, okay, so why do we even need a new approach? My group at UCL, we typically work with economic data. So our research questions are usually around economic activities and trying to design policies based on to foster economic growth. So the first thing that we wanted to do was try and look at traditional approaches and look at traditional data and see if we could use that data. And we kind of started running into these issues that I kind of want to highlight to you. The first thing is, usually these censuses are surveys that are extremely expensive and labor intensive. Part of the manual component of these surveys also can cause spatial holes in the data, by which I mean that there are areas that might just be missing from your census because these are areas inaccessible due to political tension or geographical barriers, language barriers, and so on and so forth. So once we started looking at this data, we found there were areas that were not complete. So if you wanted to do policy making or policy decisions in these areas, then you're kind of stumped because what do we do with these data holes? How do we fill them out? The other problem that we saw is because surveys are so expensive, they are usually quite far apart, so would be 5 or 10 years apart. And what happens then is you get temporal data holes in your data. So what happens is in certain regions where development is happening way too quickly, boundaries change, your enumeration areas change, and this creates temporal holes in the data, and there is no continuous data for you to analyze over the years. So if you were to look at how a policy worked in a certain area, again, it's difficult because now you have temporal gaps in the area. So all of these can then lead to incomplete analysis and ill-informed policies, right? So that's the bad news. And these are problems that we have lived with for a long time. But the good news is that we are right now in an era where digitalization and rapid digitalization has helped us and given us access to various new forms of data. There are people who, almost everyone has access to mobile phones in this day and age. It has created access to social media data, which is now a new form of data that can be used in disaster response, health interventions, and so on and so forth. What is also exciting is that satellites are a lot cheaper to just put in space. They're using better lenses. So even your satellite imagery data is a lot improved to what it was 5 or 10 years ago. And the most exciting part for a computer scientist like me is that we now have these extended and very improved AI machine learning models that helps us analyze data in a better way, in a more effective manner. So all in all, very good news. But the question is, now, how do we use these methodologies to then fill these spatial gaps in our data, which can be resolved from missing data, or it could also be trying to obtain more granular data, which is sometimes not very easy because census data is available at a more higher administrative units or larger administrative units. And the other thing that we want to do is probably fill these temporal gaps. So what's going on in the region and between these censuses. So one of the things that we did and this is something that's it is a quite established methodology in this area, is the use of ancillary data sets to complement census data or ground truth data. So where you have, and World Pop does this as well, where you have census data, population data, and what you want to do, you might want to go to a more granular scale from a city level to a regional level. Or you could also want to see how population has evolved in an area over the years. So when you want to do this, how do we make use of ancillary data sets to predict these population in these instances? What you typically do is you rely on satellite imageries, such as nighttime lights, topography. So these are all variables and data that kind of explains population. So for instance, nighttime lights is used typically to understand the degree of urbanization in cities or in regions. And as you can see, that there's a famous picture that I've also added to my slide, where there is this stark difference between North Korea and South Korea that you can see from space in terms of urbanization. And the idea is that the higher the degree of urbanization, it is more likely that there is more population in those areas. Similarly, with topography, rough terrain likely will have less people. Similarly, with road networks and pollution, all of them can, to a certain extent, be related to population data or economic activity data. So what we do is then we take all of these layers of data from satellite imagery or crowdsourced data, and we fit a machine learning model to it. We have our ground truth data from censuses. It could be economic census if you're trying to predict economic activity in a region. It could be population census if you're trying to predict population in a region. So you have your ground truth data, and you have these new layers of ancillary data sets, and you fit the model. In some ways, you kind of train it to understand how each of these data layers contribute to the socioeconomic indicator, so population or economic activity. And what we find is we tried it for economic activity data, and what we find is that these machine learning models can actually predict employment density or economic activity in cities quite well. On the left, you can see the observed employment density, and on the right, you can see the predicted employment density. And what is more exciting is, in some ways, I think what we predict is more precise and more granular. So it makes, well, in some ways, it could make for better policy making. And why do I say that? So firstly, as we've seen, that these methodologies can help you fill gaps of missing data. You can use them to calibrate your census data. You can use these ancillary data sets to validate your census data and fill out missing gaps to make your analysis better. What is also important is that it lets you fill out temporal holes in the data, which means, so between two censuses, how do we know how much an area has developed? And data like that and insights like that can help you even distribute resources during your next census. Where should you go? Where do we need to send more people? And finally, it also, methodologies like these can help us have more refined analysis of and for targeted interventions. And what do I mean about that? This is another piece of work that we've been looking at, where we wanted to understand which are the critical road segments in a city. And in terms of economic impact. And what we mean by that is which are the streets or road segments in a city that connect most people from their homes to their jobs. So in terms of, in cases of disasters or in cases of floods, climate crisis, which is an impending issue, if these streets in some way were disrupted, then how would it impact the economic activity in the city? So the idea is to kind of rank streets in a city based on their importance to economic activity. And what we first did was we took city level data, population data, and which obviously doesn't work. And we did an analysis. And what you see is because it's city level, you assume uniform distribution of population and uniform distribution of employment, which is not the case, we all know. But that's the data that we had from the official data that we had in the case of Kigali. And when we do an analysis like that, we see that peripheral roads that do not pass through the city center emerge as important segments in the road network, which again does not make sense because these are not just by looking at the employment data beneath. The red are areas with high employment and blue are areas with less employment. You can just tell that it doesn't make sense because you would expect people going into the red roads going into the red region would come out important, which is why it's important to know to have granular data and know precise locations of homes and jobs. So when we then disaggregated the city level statistics into more granular data and we rerun our analysis, we found that then it started to make sense where we found roads leading from outskirts into the city center came up as more important or critical road segments. So when you're thinking about infrastructure investments, you would, these are the roads that you would want to protect. And these are the roads that would make your economy, your city more resilient. And we find that that's why it's so important to use these new frontier technologies to not only fill out missing gaps in spatial or temporal data, but also for more granular and more specific policy analysis. So I hope I've been able to convince you and get you excited about this cutting edge research. I just want to give a big shout out to my team at UCL, CASA. This is the kind of work that we do, and do get in touch if you'd like to have if you have more questions or if you'd like to chat more. Thank you so much.
Any question we have? All right. So thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insightful presentation and focusing on use of AI ML in policy making. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. So with this, now we are here at the last session of the day, and the topic is using geospatial data with UK experience. So before calling Mr. Richard Campbell, I would take this opportunity to introduce him. Mr. Richard Campbell has over 25 years of experience in the UK Government Statistical Service, specializing in modernizing statistics. He currently leads a team of 50 data scientists at the UK Office for National Statistics, driving innovation in data science. Outside work, he enjoys long distance running and good food. So thank you. Please, I welcome you, sir. Please come forward for you. Thank you. I would request a technical expert to please help him in set up a presentation.
This is where I claim, oh no, this will be easy, but maybe I Brilliant. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the great introduction. That does save me doing that. So, as I say, using geospatial data is nothing new within the UK, as I'm sure it isn't within India. I was lucky enough to have had the opportunity to have founded GIS teams in both our Food Standards Agency and Transport Ministry over 20 years ago. I didn't do both at the same time. In fact, my first actual GIS job was mapping shellfish beds in Scotland as part of a project to monitor food safety of shellfish in the face of different environmental conditions. I don't, unfortunately, have any slides from that today. So, moving away from my personal experience, the increased use of data science and distributive computing are opening up the use of geospatial data in new and innovative ways. I think it's going from being a sort of specialist separate topic, although there are and will always need to be specialists, into something that's becoming more of a mainstream part of our analysis. I've got a diverse range of examples conducted by different teams within the data science campus within the UK Office for National Statistics, our National Statistics Agency. But before going into those, I'd just like to share a couple of thoughts on the importance of geospatial data and GIS in general in the context of official statistics. As I say, I think maybe I have a slight bias on this importance given my background in GIS, but I believe the points still stand. So my first point is there's an ever-increasing focus on greater granularity and details in our statistics. One aspect of granularity is geography. Policymakers want to evaluate and monitor impact at a local level, as we heard from our previous speaker. People want to understand what is happening in their neighbourhood. The desire for this detail has always been there, but now we're in a world where the technology and growth of data sources enables this to become more of a reality. My second point is that geospatial is the best way of combining data I have ever seen. I think we've seen some great examples from the last two speakers, actually. As long as something can be tied to a location, then it can be linked to other data sources. And it's through the linkage of the data sources in general that we get some great analytical insights. In the examples that I'll share with you, see how some of these points come to life and how underpin how we're using geospatial data in the UK. So my first example here is looking at financial transactions data. So our financial transactions team within the data science campus has built a partnership with Visa, a credit card company. So this work uses anonymized credit card transaction data back to 2019. And this data shows where the spend took place, and with both geographically and with what sort of business, and where the people live at a postcode district level. So this is not quite a pin code or zip code, it's a slightly more aggregated. Think of it as the size of a small town. So what this does is creates a giant matrix of spending flows. So, you know, across the whole of the UK, and there's lots that can be done with this. So some of the things so far has been to look just simply at these spending flows, who is spending money where, how that has changed over time. Also to augment tourism estimates at a local level, you know, on the basis that if you're spending money far away from home, perhaps you're a tourist. And also to look at calculating local consumption zones. So this is trying to put, you know, what's I suppose the catchment area for spend. But this is just an initial phase. These are all quite experimental analyses. What the team is looking at doing now is explore how this data can be integrated into our core statistics, including the national accounts, things like household spending and so on, because then we'll release some more, even more value from it. My next example actually takes us internationally, and it comes from our social and international team in the data science campus. Now, the role of this team is to use its data science skills in support of the UK's international development efforts. This example was us working with the United Nations and the Somali Bureau of Statistics and the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And it was to do with the Somali census. So in Somalia, there is a large internally displaced population because of war and disturbance there. These are really hard to count within a census because, you know, they do not have a regular home. And a lot of them are in these internally displaced people camps. And the camps move and they're constantly changing in population and size. So what the team came up with was a machine learning algorithm to use satellite imagery and use that to assess the population of camps. So they trained on a number of existing camps, looking and saying, well, you know, distinguishing, going, that is a tree, that is a tent, that's a tent, but people don't live there, maybe that's where they go for food or so on. And then applying this more broadly. So this fulfilled its main aim of improving the Somali census, which is, you know, obviously important for lots of reasons. I don't think to this audience I have to explain the importance of a census. But I think what's really great is it's provided broader benefits. So they've created an app for wider use in comparable settings. The next one comes from our transport team in the data science campus. So they look to use data from the Maritime Automatic Identification System, which is known as AIS, to deepen our understanding of international trade. So AIS tracks ships in near real time. You can get this on your mobile phone. It's, I don't know, I'm a little bit of a transport geek. I've worked in our transport ministry. It's fun. But it has a serious aim as well. And what we've done here is to use it to estimate the volumes of traffic through major shipping passages and ports. And our particular area of interest was gaining an early view of trade with the UK several weeks before the official estimates can be produced. Because if you think, this is showing where the ships are going in pretty much real time. If you know the ships are at the port in the UK, then you can say, well, there's some trade. There are limitations, as I think there can be for all these data. And the limitation that we face here is we don't actually yet know what's on each of the ships. So we have to make some assumptions based on the size and the type of ship. You know, if you have a yacht sailing into a non-major port, we can be fairly confident it isn't containing high-value goods. Well, maybe not legal high-value goods anyway, but we're looking to overcome this limitation. So we're now looking to link these data to the shipping, what do we call them, instructions, which lists the cargo. So that will help us take this data further and make it even more useful. My next example comes from my own team, Reproducible Data Science and Analysis. Now, for those of you who hear my talk this morning, I mentioned our area of expertise is economic statistics, and we were sort of born out of the transformation of our economic statistics. Most of these were traditionally published at a UK level, maybe at a regional level at best. So regional in the UK context is Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, which I should call countries, not regions, especially as I'm Welsh, but then 9 regions of England. So not that granular. But there's been a real push in the last few years to get local economic data to really drive the monitoring, well, decision-making, policy monitoring and analysis at a local level. My colleagues in the UK Treasury would love it if we could produce GDP for every street in the country. We're not quite there yet, but we have started to make some strides. So the first statistic that we looked at was gross value added. We're also looking at interregional trade and gross domestic household income. This slide says it's regional gross value added, but that hugely underplays the level of detail that we've managed to get into place. So we produce this for geographies called lower super output areas. Essentially, these are about 1,000 households, 1,000 to 3,000 people each, and they're an agglomeration of a set of geographies that were developed for the UK census back, I think, for 2011. So the idea that you had a geography that was stable and based around population rather than perhaps administrative reasons. The basic approach for taking the methodology on this and all the statistics is we're taking the data, the national data at the lowest level we can get to, and then linking it to other data sources to disaggregate to a very, very local level. And as I say, it's already making a really big difference in UK policy making, national policy making at a local level as well with local authorities. The last example I want to share also comes from our travel team. And this is looking at access to jobs at different times of day via different transportation modes. And this is made possible but through combining a range of data sources, including transport networks and timetables. While the current focus is on employment, this approach can be adapted for other purposes. I think accessibility, I've heard it mentioned today, is a really, really key concept. So, for example, you could look at public transport access to key services, for those who don't have access to a car, or to retail. In fact, when I was at the Food Standards Agency many years ago, we were keen to understand people's accessibility to fresh food from a health perspective. That wasn't possible then, but I think with this work it is possible now, as long as you have a geocodable data source. So there we are, a few examples of innovative use of GIS within the UK. While the examples are diverse in nature, they share a common theme in innovation. And for me, the big challenge is how we take these ideas from being experimental analyses, which are adding a lot of value, into becoming, well, and directly improving our core statistics, GDP, inflation, population estimates, and so on. I think broadening this point out, and this has come up a number of times today, productionizing innovations is a challenge that we'll all need to face if we're to truly modernize our statistical systems. Thank you.
Any questions for Richard? Please.
Thank you so much, Rich. This was really an interesting presentation. So some of the examples that you showed really combines different skills and expertise. There's geography, geospatial, there's data science, there's economic statistics and data, and maybe commuting times and stuff like that. So can you speak a little bit to how you organize teams and what kind of skills you you look for to bring together in order to do these types of projects, and how that's organized in UK ONS and the Data Science Campus?
Yes, of course. So there's a couple of different models that have been employed. The traditional Data Science Campus before my team joined was very much in the world of, let us go and speak to people who are a subject matter expert, let us hear what your issues are, and then we will help find solutions. So there was a partnership there. My team works more on a model of having a defined challenge and problem, and then knowing fundamentally what the solution is and working to deliver that. But the key point in both is partnerships. So one team working on its own will always have limitations, however diverse the skills of that team are. We need the true subject matter expertise. We need the, I'm forgetting the word here. The methodological knowledge as well. We need the user demand. Within the teams itself, I think within my team of data scientists and within the Data Science Campus, data science is a broad church. It covers, as you noted, many different disciplines. And where the strength of the team comes is from actually ensuring that we are recruiting from a range of backgrounds. We have people who are statisticians, economists, operational researchers, social researchers, software engineers, geographers, physicists. And what we look to is we look to create a commonality in how they apply data science, but bring all those different elements of skills together. And added to that, the point I was making this morning when I had my data science circle, we're looking to bring in more subject matter expertise from the office, perhaps people with no background in coding. But, understanding subject matter is a key part of data science. I think that's the next challenge, how we bring them, rather than it being a partnership, they are actually part of the family.
Any other question? Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
So now we have come to the concluding session of today's long day, but a very exciting day. We concluded 2 segments of geospatial vertical. The first segment was dedicated for frame updation, and we understood how we can leverage the geospatial techniques along with the application of AI for without actually going to the field for a door-to-door survey for urban frame updation, or going in a sample basis, at least in the bigger cities. And then the segment 2, we understood how using geospatial apps, we can directly develop apps for collecting data. The third segment, unfortunately, we had to split in 2 parts. The segment is dedicated for visualization using geospatial tools. We had very exciting 3 presentations with respect to this segment today. And the remaining part we will be doing tomorrow. So I thank all the presenters, all the moderators and discussants for making our day such an exciting experience. Before concluding, I'll request all of you to kindly assemble tomorrow at 9:30 in this hall who are participating in this geospatial vertical, because we have to conclude the session in 4:30 and assemble for the valedictory session. Thank you very much. Good night. And